One Instagram comment, 3 words that sent shockwaves through the entire WNBA and left Kelsey Plum completely speechless. When Caitlin Clark posted, "Thank you for the Nike ad" under Plum's own photo, the internet knew exactly what had just happened. This wasn't just a response. This was pure destruction wrapped in politeness.
Caitlin Clark commented on her picture, "Thank you for the Nike ad. What a weekend."
But the story behind this legendary clapback runs deeper than anyone realized. And what led to this moment will shock you. The tension had been building for months, veteran players whispering in locker rooms, subtle digs during interviews, and then came the All-Star weekend that changed everything. What was supposed to be a celebration of women's basketball became the stage for one of the most brutal public humiliations in sports history, and it all started with a meeting that Caitlin Clark never attended. The WNBA All-Star Game should have been a moment of unity, players from across the league coming together to showcase their talent and push for better pay. The "Pay Us What You Owe Us" t-shirt campaign was gaining momentum, and the message was powerful, but behind the scenes, something darker was brewing. In a meeting room before the festivities began, players gathered to discuss their strategy for demanding higher salaries and better working conditions. It was supposed to be about solidarity, about lifting each other up. Then Kelsey Plum opened her mouth. During the post-game press conference, with cameras rolling and the world watching, Plum couldn't resist taking a shot, not to tattletale, she said with a smirk that barely hid her intentions, but 0 members of Team Clark were very present for that. The room went silent, even Sabrina Ionescu, sitting right beside her, visibly cringed. You could see the discomfort in her eyes, the way her body language shifted. She knew a line had been crossed.
United front, but only half of us were really united. United front, but only half of us are really talking about what to do behind the scenes.
But here's what makes Plum's comment so ridiculous. Caitlin Clark wasn't even supposed to be at that meeting. She wasn't playing in the All-Star game, having been ruled out to rest and recover in her hometown. She had no obligation to attend a meeting for an event she wasn't participating in, yet somehow, Plum twisted her absence into ammunition for a public attack. This wasn't about team unity or fair pay, this was pure jealousy disguised as activism. The reaction was swift and brutal. Fans immediately saw through the fake concern. Social media exploded with support for Clark and disgust at Plum's pettiness. NBA legends like Charles Barkley called out the hypocrisy. Former players questioned why anyone would attack the one person responsible for bringing unprecedented attention and money to the league. Even WNBA veterans were uncomfortable with how this looked. The optics were terrible, attacking the golden goose while demanding more golden eggs. What happened next separated the superstars from the wannabes. Most athletes would have fired back immediately with a heated response or defensive interview. They would have taken the bait and escalated the drama, but Caitlin Clark, she chose silence. Not the silence of someone who's been defeated, but the calculated quiet of someone who knows their next move will be devastating. She understood something that Plum clearly didn't. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. Days passed. The controversy continued to swirl. Sports analysts debated whether Clark should defend herself. Fans demanded she clap back. But Clark was playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. She knew that her influence spoke louder than any words ever could, and then came the move that nobody saw coming. Nike had been building a massive campaign around their partnership with Clark. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. As the All-Star controversy reached its peak, Clark appeared front and center in a global Nike advertisement that showcased her as the face of women's basketball. The message was clear without saying a word. While others were talking, she was securing generational wealth and brand partnerships that would last long after her playing career ended. But the real masterpiece was still coming. Kelsey Plum, who happens to be an Under Armour athlete, showed up at a Nike event during All-Star weekend. The irony was already thick enough to cut with a knife. Here was the person who had just publicly criticized Clark, now appearing at an event centered around Clark's primary competitor brand. Plum posted a photo from the Nike event on her Instagram, probably thinking nothing of it. That's when Caitlin Clark struck with surgical precision. 3 simple words under Plum's own post: "Thank you for the Nike ad." The comment was so perfectly crafted it belonged in a textbook on psychological warfare. It was polite enough that Plum couldn't claim it was disrespectful. It was subtle enough that casual observers might miss the deeper meaning, but for anyone paying attention, the message was crystal clear. While you're over there trying to tear me down, you're literally helping promote my brand at my competitor's event. The internet lost its mind. The comment exploded with thousands of likes within hours. Fans immediately understood the genius of what had just happened. Clark had turned Plum's own social media post into an advertisement for her Nike partnership. She had used Plum's presence at the Nike event as proof of her own dominance in the space. It was brutal, it was brilliant, and it was completely devastating. But the most telling part wasn't Clark's comment, it was Plum's complete lack of response, no witty comeback, no clarification, no attempt to spin the situation in her favor. Just radio silence. The kind of silence that screams defeat, because what could she possibly say? How do you recover from being so thoroughly outmaneuvered in public? How do you explain attending a Nike event after criticizing their biggest star, then getting called out for it by that same star? The aftermath revealed just how badly Plum had miscalculated. What was supposed to be her moment to knock Clark down a peg instead became the perfect setup for Clark to showcase her untouchable status. Brand partnerships flooded in for Clark, media coverage intensified around her every move. Meanwhile, Plum's comments were being dissected and criticized across every sports platform. She had wanted to diminish Clark's light, but instead made it shine brighter than ever. This controversy exposed something much deeper than just personal beef between two players. It revealed the uncomfortable truth about the WNBA's relationship with its biggest star. For decades, the league struggled for relevance, losing money year after year while fighting for scraps of mainstream attention. Then Caitlin Clark arrived and changed everything overnight. Ratings skyrocketed, merchandise sales exploded, expansion fees jumped from $50 million to $250 million. The league suddenly had leverage in negotiations it had never possessed before. But with that success came resentment from some corners. Players who had been grinding in obscurity for years suddenly found themselves overshadowed by a rookie. Veterans who had carried the league through its darkest days watched as Clark received more attention in her first month than they had gotten in entire careers. The jealousy was understandable, but the way it manifested was self-destructive. The resistance to Clark's rise wasn't just coming from players like Plum. Parts of the WNBA establishment seemed uncomfortable with one person having so much influence so quickly. When Clark took hard fouls during games, the league's response was muted. When she faced hostile crowds, there was little support from official channels. But when she missed one meeting, she was publicly called out by her own peers. The double standard was glaring. What made Clark's Instagram response so powerful was how it exposed all of this dysfunction without her having to say a word about it directly. She didn't need to complain about unfair treatment or defend her commitment to the league. She simply demonstrated her value in the most concrete way possible, through her brand power, her influence, and her ability to turn any situation to her advantage. The broader implications of this moment extend far beyond basketball. This was a masterclass in how to handle criticism, jealousy, and public attacks. Clark showed that sometimes the best defense is not defending at all, but rather letting your success speak for itself. She proved that class and strategic thinking will always triumph over pettiness and impulsive reactions. Kelsey Plum learned the hard way that there are levels to this game. You don't attack someone who operates on a completely different plane than you do. You don't try to diminish someone whose influence extends far beyond the sport itself. And you definitely don't hand them the perfect setup for a devastating comeback by attending their sponsor's event and posting about it on social media. The final score of this confrontation wasn't even close. Clark emerged with her reputation enhanced, her brand stronger, and her position as the face of the league more secure than ever. Plum was left looking petty, jealous, and completely outclassed. The fans chose their side overwhelmingly, and it wasn't the side of the person throwing unprovoked shots at the league's biggest star. This is what happens when greatness meets insecurity, when strategic thinking encounters emotional reactions, when someone who understands their value meets someone who's threatened by it. Caitlin Clark didn't just win this battle, she ended it so decisively that nobody will make the same mistake again. She turned what was supposed to be her moment of vulnerability into the perfect demonstration of why she's untouchable. The lesson here isn't just about basketball or social media warfare, it's about understanding your worth, choosing your battles wisely, and never letting other people's limitations define your potential. While Kelsey Plum was focused on tearing someone else down, Caitlin Clark was building something that couldn't be torn down. That's the difference between a star and a superstar. That's why one comment destroyed an entire narrative, and why some people will always be followers while others are born to lead.